Hello and welcome to the Trinity Tech Talk here, live from Munich, live from the Arri studio. Now, this is the fourth year that Trinity is with Arri, and it's the fourth year that Artemis is with Arri. And if you would ask me what is a word to describe this the best, I would say inspiration. Because for me, this was a very inspiring time, I have to say. And I think the technology we showed 4 years ago to Arri inspired Arri to give us, as operator, a new home. I think the other thing we did in the last years, we inspired many people. And I would say one of the guys we inspired badly was Roger Deakins. So September 2018, he came to Munich and he gave me a vague idea about his next movie, 1917. And to be honest, we didn't have any details, but he told me there's a lot of movement and he needs a clever device to make this movement as clean as possible, because we know Roger likes clean framing. And then he asked me if I could think about a good operator who could be a good choice for him. And I said, well, maybe it's Charlie. And when you see this photo, I think you can see there's two operators, two cameramen, they're inspiring each other. And I have to say, the result, on the other hand, inspired me. As I saw the movie, I was really touched badly, because I'm so thankful that we as operators, gimbal operators, Steadicam operators, Trinity operators, at such a stage, such a platform to show what is possible and how this technology and the skills of the operator can support this kind of shooting. And we inspired many other people, like this movie's coming up to the cinema, this movies we did, TV series we did. I think Aaron Matter definitely changed Mr. Robert. The entire look was changed through the special angles we can approach with the Trinity. We've been part of Doctor Who, some really nice German productions, some Indian things shot by a Norwegian operator, really brilliant. Some new German series coming soon, based also using Trinity for this kind of framing and dynamics. And a lot of other great production which are on the way. And what you can see clearly here, that this is a lot of Netflix and a lot of daily shooting. Because I think Trinity offers, especially for this kind of production, the right flexibility, the momentum, but also the storytelling, because we always can film the eyes. We can be so close to the actor with the camera, not with the operator, which is also a big difference to the older days and the systems we used 5 years ago. Now, to make your life easier and your setup faster, tonight I would like to show you some brackets and some, let's say, different workflows we worked on in the past to make your setup time shorter, to give you more time to talk to the director, to develop the movement, and to get used to the next take. So let me get you into our white box and I show you the latest bracket we made. Is the so-called SSB1, which is a tiny bracket which looks like a cheese plate with a lot of holes, 8-inch holes, M3 holes, parking position for screws at the side and parking position for screws at the bottom. So this different kind of screws tells us also the story that we have two different kind of usage for this bracket. The first one is you can use it with any SAM plate or with any dovetail plate which comes with the remote head or with the Trinity and the Maxima. So this allows you to add lens support bracket, because a lot of complaints was that we have issues to get a lens support mounted below the camera when we're using a Trinity and a Maxima. So this is definitely solved with the SSB1 bracket. So what you can do here, you can mount the SSB1 bracket pointing down, or you can flip it over and pointing up. So this already gives you two heights right away. The next thing you can do is you can mount the 50mm lightweight support bracket in the lower position or in the upper position. So in the end, you can reach 4 different distances between the lens support, the 50mm rods, and the camera itself. Let me quickly show you on the table how this will look in function. So in this case, we just take the SAM2 plate, put it below the Mini, and you can see how much clearance we have. We can also get it shorter, and you can also see that the SSB1 bracket is designed this way that it can travel even inside the clamping mechanism. So there is A lot of travel, a lot of space available, no limitations. And the other way to use the SSP1 bracket is to use it in Trinity. So let me get the camera out of the way. And let me show you in our lovely white box the other features. So all these little holes we can use, for example, of course, again, we're mounting the light wide support. So we can also have 50mm rods above the camera, which I'll show you later, which is quite helpful. We can use the RMB6, which allows us to have a center rod right in the center of the above the lens, so we can mount all the motors on a single rod above the lens. We can have RMB freeze this way, which allows us to change our balance procedure. I'll show you later, which is quite interesting. Of course, we can mount all these Noga arms. And another thing I really like a lot is this little plate here, which also is available in different lengths. So even this allows you to add extra weight or accessories, which you can also use for the balance process later. Now let me show you how to mount this to the Trinity. So for the Trinity and the Maxima, we're using the two screws which are parked here at the sides. And we need a 2.5mm Allen wrench to get the screws out of the parking position. So please follow me back to the Trinity. So we're using the holes which are at the top of the ring, and you have this little cutaway in the ring. So we follow the shape of the ring. So you're just placing the SSP1 bracket at the front, and from the back you're mounting these two long screws. Which takes a second, as you can see. So the first thing we do is, for example, we're using, one second, the RMB6. We put it right there. With the rod, now we can put all the C-Force mini motors just pointing down. That means if this camera have to go somewhere else with a different setup, we could have all motors mounted on a single rod, so we just can pull out the motors very, very fast. Or what also could be very attractive, if the first AC want to change something in the camera and he would love to use the viewfinder, he got a space to put the viewfinder. Quite as simple. So he can do his job. The viewfinder is parked very well, and after he's done, he's good to go. Now the other thing we can do with the SSP1 bracket is, let me prepare this, I will show you later. The final approach here is we use an RMB2 and we make the SSP1 bracket a new part of our, let me say, slightly changed balance process. On this slide, you can see the Arri brackets, which can interact with the SSP1. And of course, you can use any other third-party bracket, which is using a free 8-inch thread. So I think the flexibility of the bracket is just amazing. And when you should have two, to be honest, because you should have one all the time up there and a second one on your SAM plates or the universal dovetail plates. And this gives you definitely a lot of possibilities to speed up your setup much faster. The other thing I would like to show you again, because we showed this already last year, September, but you know, things happen meanwhile. So let me just refresh your knowledge about our little counterweight set. So the set is a big one and two smaller weights. The weight of the small counterweights is the same weight like a C-Force mini motor. So the idea behind this, because every time we do the balance, we want that the camera is balanced in symmetry. That means if we have one motor on one side, we would like to have another motor on the other side, just to get the camera perfectly balanced. But if we don't have a motor, we could use this. So the way to use this as a counterweight is, you see we have 4 frets at the back, And this allows us to place an RMB free. And now we can put this motor on the other side as a counterweight to the mounted motor on the right side. Of course, the other main function of this is that we can screw the weights together and sandwich them and make them more heavy. And to ensure that when they are locked together, they're really tightened, we added a kind of a brake pad material up there. So this brake pad will ensure that the frets will not get any loose by themselves. This material will also compensate any kind of vibration. So this counterweight will not produce any unwanted vibration in your system. Now let's see at the rig where you can mount the weights. So of course, when you're using the Mini LF, you should always use the rear bracket, because the rear bracket gives you so many places you can add the counterweight. It definitely in optimizing the all-over stiffness of the package. So from my point of view, this is a must-have combined with a SAM2. Now at the front, if we now add the 90mm rod, for example, to an RMB free, which we mounted on the same line like this, the lens, so this is a very balanced position, we can add this amount of weight, and this will perfectly now counterbalance the motor on the right side. And a bit later, I will show you another nice way how to use this, and the bracket up there. So this little chart just gives you a quick idea. So this is the number you should order. And this is the sizes also in pounds. The other thing, which is, some people know it already, some maybe not, is the donut. The donut is an 800 gram counterweight, which is quite beefy, and it's made out of 2 steel pieces. Inside the ring, you see the Delrin insert, and we have different inserts for 1.5 inch post and 1.8 inch post. So the idea for this device is that, for example, you want to do a top shot on a table 90 degrees down, we have to extend very fast the distance between the head and the gimbal. And of course there's one way, which is a standard solution, we're adding the post extenders. But it also could mean, if we can't add any extra counterweight, that our rig gets unnecessarily long. So if we need both, that we want to extend to the front, but we don't want to expand to the back end of the rig, we need more weight. Of course, there's one solution could be you're using just more heavy, bigger batteries. The issue with this is that bigger batteries are not symmetric inside the battery. That means even if it looks symmetric, your setup, but technically it isn't anymore, because the way the batteries are built could mean that your entire rig gets out of balance and you have to rebalance the rig, which will not happen if you're just adding the donut, because here the weight is perfectly mounted to the center line. That means it's absolutely neutral, it's just more counterweight, but it doesn't move the rig in any direction, which also ensures you still can do perfect whip pans, because your dynamic balance is still the same as in the short version. And as I said before, the good thing about this, especially if you're adding 2 of these, you can keep the lower part of the rig quite compact, while the top of the head is extended out to get this kind of a shot. Another reason to use the donut is if you need the rig to get even shorter, because you want to get the rig really inside the car through the door. So to get into the car, we need to be as short as possible. So this is also a way to get there, because then you're mounting 2 of these donuts on the 1.8 inch post. So from my point, this is a must-have either. Here is the order number, and you can find, of course, all these lovely brackets on the refreshed and renewed Arri webpage, which now is much easier for you to use, because all the accessories and brackets dedicated to this kind of a rig is on the same page, on the same list. So it's very simple to understand and to find what works together in a smart way. The other thing, which is back in our lovely white room, so let's go there, is this little thing which we call the Trinity centering tool. As you can see, this is just a simple 3D printed part. So technically you can do it yourself, and you will find very, very soon the needed print file on the web page. So the idea about this tool, I will show you on the table. So the idea about this is, as we all know, the Trinity setup, and to get this lovely straight move down, is all based on perfect balance and symmetry. So this should help you to get the rig in symmetry from the first second. So the idea about this is, in the moment you're just placing the top stage to the post, or just get the top stage out of the case, what you should do is you just place, I hope you can see this. Let me turn this around. Yeah, here, this way you can see better. So you just take that centering tool and you turn the top stage left and right till you can feel with your fingertips that the tool and the housing is perfectly lined up on both sides. Now you just do exactly the same procedure. Let me see what is better for you. Let's try it this way. You do exactly the same procedure here. You're moving the pendulum left and right till you can feel, okay, this is perfectly centered. Now, what is good about this procedure is when you're adding the batteries V-shaped, the battery in the back, let's say a video transmitter, you can be absolutely sure that your lower sled is perfectly in a line with the post, with the gimbal, and with the center of the ring. Which also brings us to a kind of a refreshed balancing process. So the first step in the renewed balancing process is use this and ensure that your entire bottom weight, your sled, is completely centered. Because now this is the reference for everything which is left and right adjustment. Second, we do the classic fore and aft adjustment of the camera. Even here we have a slight idea meanwhile. First of all, you see I could work easily on my ring and it didn't move at all because I used this lovely bracket made by our dear friend Sebastian Joly from the UK. So it's a very, very good thing to have, especially in the setup procedure. So now let's talk about the fore and aft adjustment of the camera. Of course, we open up the clamp and we're moving the camera fore and aft. Now, there was a lot of discussion, of course, online and in our workshops, and we discussed the question, do we need to be perfect balanced? Should we be super neutral? Yes, no, what is the right thing to do? Now, my personal point here is we should not be too perfect. Of course, we should have a perfect weight distribution and we should try to look for a very neutral feel. But in the end, we should have a slight, let me turn this into the side. We should have a slight movement to the front, just a very slight one. Why is that so? If you balance the head too perfectly into a neutral position, you bring the gimbal, as the way it works, into a kind of a dilemma, because the gimbal don't know if he should move the motors this way to the next magnet or in the other way to the other magnet. So technically we could end up that the motors start to oscillate in between two positions because the gimbal doesn't have a clear idea of what he should do. By having this a little front heavy, we give the entire system a clear idea that we want the camera to lean into this direction, and then the gimbal will do exactly what we want to do, what we want him to do, to just hold the camera on this dedicated position. Because again, if the gimbal doesn't know what he should do, he will start to travel in between two positions, which will end up in oscillation and other things we will talk later about. So after we find this slightly, really carefully, slightly front-heavy position, we go back to our classic horizontal thing. We find a neutral position here, and of course we use as much as possible the fine trim, because this will also speed up the process. And then the next step, as classic as we are used to, we go fore and aft adjustment by moving batteries in and out with the fine trim. But remember, keep the pendulum slightly in, more facing to the front. So we can have the pendulum perfectly centered with the post, or I would say move it 10, 15 millimeters more forward, because it will give you a bit more drop down in the horizontal position when you do your rotation test, or anywhere when you do a horizontal move forward, for example, through the window of a car. And now here's a big change now. The next thing, of course, we will have to adjust the side to side. Now, because we used this little simple tool, we made the lower slat our reference. So to get the system balanced left and right, we need to move the camera, which we did most of the time in the past. So we open up here in the front and move the camera to the side, which also, of course, means we may move the sensor a little bit out of the optical and mechanically center of the ring. But thanks to the SSP1, we have now an alternative. So the concept now is you can really move the camera, the sensor, perfectly in the center of the ring. And then you just add this little rod. And just by moving the rod left and right, you will have so much momentum in effect that you can trim the entire rig left and right very easily and very precise, because here you can do a very precise little movements, and in the moment you got the right position, just lock it and you're done. So if you got the feeling, oh, it's still not enough, I need much more support up there, then again, just take this little lightweight counterweight with the RMB free arm and just add this to your little setting, and then you have for sure more counterweight and more possibilities to compensate offset settings. The good thing about this is you can use the entire setting even down here. So even here you can, instead of up here, you can do it down there, which also have another interesting aspect because you can also use longer 90mm rods here to do the same kind of adjustment. Plus, you will have a second little add-on feature, which is a kind of an antenna feeling. So the rod will also give you a bit more inertia on the roll axis, like in the old days with the antenna. So I think it makes really sense to get an SSP1, go to the next Arri rental, get all the brackets and play around, and you will see that with this little bracket we can change so much dramatically the balance process, and also we can also compensate tricky camera setups, very tricky camera setups with whatever huge accessory boxes, you know what I'm talking about, the awful part. Now the next step, of course, after we balance the rig so nicely left and right, so precisely, we will bring back the rig to horizontal and we do our classic rotation adjustments. And now you will see, if you did down there a good job, there's slightly no compensation or adjustment needed anymore. You will see that the rig will be perfectly itself in the horizon position. And you also will see that there's a lot of willing that the rig likes to go when you lift it up by 5 degrees back to the center and you go to the other side, it will have the same speed on both sides just to roll back to the center. And if there's still a little need for a adjustment, you will see that a quarter of a turn or 1/8 of a turn already is enough to get the rig to the perfect neutral sweet spot. And this all comes from the SSP1 and this little device, because we changed the lower slat into a very precise amount of counterweight. The other thing we did is, already 6 months ago, we uploaded on Facebook this new PID settings, and the colored one just gives you an idea about different camera sizes and weights, and also the length of the camera. But what is more interesting about this chart is the first line, the yellow one, because if you have a closer look, you see that I lowered the values for P and D on the roll axis extremely. Why we do this? The idea behind here is that we want to give you an idea of what you can do against the so-called snailing effect. This is something the internet is talking a while. It's an effect which happens especially when you try to walk a very, very straight line. So let me try to explain what snailing is all about. Snailing comes in the end from the roll axis. So what happens is when you walk, especially when you walk a bit dirty, let's say, what happens is that your movement of the hips is transformed through the arm sidewise into the rig. So technically the rig does this, or you're pushing it that way. What happens is, of course, the roll axis thinks, oh, I have to counter move. So what happens is the roll axis will, every time you push it sideways, the roll axis will compensate this movement. With the new values, 1 on P and 2 on D, we lowered the amount of counter power of the roll axis. That means now we can ensure whatever you put in from the side, the reaction is not so powerful as it was before, because in the first factory preset we had just a quite high power momentum on the roll axis, which also means that whatever you push in to the rig from the side was even oscillated or higher than more. It was a stronger feedback than what you put in. It was amplified. With the new values, we moved this down to a minimum. That means whatever you put in will not come out that strong anymore like before. And this lower, let's say, softer reaction of the roll axis will immediately lower the effect of this snailing. Because if the roll axis is reacting too powerful, it's overreacting, there's a momentum, there's energy, and this energy have to go somewhere. And the easiest way for the energy to get out of the system is the pan axis, because the gimbal, of course, is super low friction. That means that's just the easiest way to get out of the rig. And this is why the rig could slightly start to oscillate here. The other thing you can do to reduce this by side lower power, perfect balance, is your arm post. You have to ensure that your arm post is absolutely insulating your movement of the hips of the Trinity. So what you really should look for is that your arm post is not scratched, that it's really smooth surface, that your bearings are good. If the bearings are not good, maybe you should replace them or just put a drop of oil in, but make sure that this is absolutely willing to move and don't block it at all. The third thing you can do is try to mount the arm connector on your vest front mount. Just lift the bridge and bring it a bit more to a neutral position, which is up here. Try to get away from the hips, because if you have the arm too low, too close to the hips, you get a lot of side hip movement into the arm. The same with back mounted. Try to lift your arm bracket just to get away from this hip movement. And of course, the thing you can do as an operator is just to rethink your start and stop. And you should maybe remember the first class you did, your first hour in the workshop was all about a smooth start and a smooth stop. And especially with Trinity, this is key again. Because if you push the rig as you do your rig, your Steadicam all the time, just push it and go ahead, you may forgot about that this camera is 15 centimeters higher. That means the inertia takes longer to pick up the movement of the camera. So you have to move first the camera to make sure the camera is already flying, and then you just follow this movement. And you will see immediately this entire snailing movement will go away. And there's another thing, of course. If someone said, walk the perfect straight line, you come back to exactly the same problem we already understood before. If you are too neutral in what you do, the sensors, the motors don't know what to do, because you don't give the motors a clear idea of what it's all about. So even here, if you are too neutral, the roll axis by itself may start to oscillate and will produce again this kind of a movement. So what you can do to get your straight line clean, bend the line and just make a little slight banana in your movement. Because the sensors are so sensitive, they will immediately feel, that's the direction we want to go. And then the motors know exactly, okay, from now on we just hold the camera this way, done. So always try to blow just a little wind in your sailing boat. Just that much that the sails are not wobbling anymore, but just the ship is not moving. And if you follow this kind of concept, you will even get the snailing effect easily under control. And that's my technical part for tonight. So let's start with your questions.
Yeah, here's a question. So what kind of camera is now in the Trinity in the moment?
Of course, it's the Mini LF with a signature prime lens. And
So what camera else could be there? Could there be a Sony Venice, for example?
Yes, and we hope you do this because we made some new brackets for you. So there's a SAM4 on the way to ensure the Sony Venice will be perfectly mounted here. And of course the SSB1 will also give you the same good access to get the motors mounted to the Venice from the top. You can use the 235 film, 416 film, of course the Alexa up to the Alexa LF, which is beefy, but it's possible.
What about the lenses? So you have here now a signature prime, which is per se lighter than other lenses.
Good choice.
So what would you recommend there?
Again, I think as an operator, as we all know, the recommendation about the lens is coming from the DP. So whatever he is asking us, we have to follow. And it's our job to make this lens work. And that's the reason why we made the SSB1 bracket. Because now we have lens support, we can mount heavy lenses, wide diameters. We can especially support anamorphic lenses perfectly because we have a stabilized roll axis. And the only thing I could say about lens choice is don't be afraid about long lenses because we have a stabilized head. You can really try to offer shots which are really long. And on the other hand, also be open for very wide angle lenses because we can go from high to low so fast. A super wide angle lens get a very good dynamic and I think a nice look, especially for music videos and commercials.
So I read another question coming in. I've found that having a lot of weight above outside of the ring, like think about CNET tape, etc., has a lot of influence on the overall balance of the rig.
Very correct.
And tilted forward. So balancing with the rod above the camera seems like a no-no to me.
If you use this, that's the idea. You can counterbalance this. On the other hand, I think also this bracket gives you the chance to get on the if you use the short Noga arm, the weight very, very low. But you're very right. Of course, there's a point. You have to find a good balance in between. That means if you put something on the rod up there, you should have something below. That means motors are down if you have CNET tape on top. You should not have everything on top at the same time. Again, you have to balance in between both sides. And again, even here, the SSB1 bracket gives you on top and on the bottom of the camera to add equipment. Or if it's still a kind of tricky, you can add, which is of course not the nicest choice, but you can add counterweights to finally compensate something which must be there if you like it or not. Then this is the right solution. Because again, you can even mount this directly into the SSB1 bracket at the front, and you can have you can put a second one in. So I think this bracket solves this kind of no-go, no-no situations in a better way as we had it till now.
What would you recommend for CNET tape positioning?
Very good question. Very good question. To be honest, I had it always below the lens. I did not use it this way. I always had it below because in the end I always tried to measure on this part because it was easier to measure than in the face. And also I like the idea that we are really parallel to the lens and not pointing down. It's also easier for my focus puller. So my advice would be below the lens.
Do we have a list of cameras that can be mounted online on the website somewhere?
No, but we should. But that's a good idea.
Okay.
Because I think it's easier to say which cameras are really no-go. Sadly, which is a no-go is, of course, a 435, 535. We can't get in the LT because you need the video top, and a video top takes a lot of space up there, so technically only film cameras. Which fits is the 235 and the 416. You can mount any box camera. You can mount also television cameras, full-size camera, if you can take off the handle. This is also possible.
Somebody's asking about, in those coronavirus times, about the next Arri Trinity Academy training.
That's a good question. The answer is that just yesterday we finished our online seminar, which is available very soon. So you just send an email to the Arri Academy and you will get access to my online video, and you can join this kind of a workshop, and you can use these videos to prepare yourself for a live session. And it means after you saw these videos, then we will arrange times we talk together and we do it online. And if needed, we can also send an equipment to your location. So you got gear at home and we got gear here, and then we do it through the internet. But as a preparation, you should watch the videos we made for you.
Similar topic, when can we expect a tech talk on SRH 360?
In, what was it, 2 weeks? 2 or 3 weeks, very soon. We're working on this. It's on the line. Same table, same place, same studio.
Okay, so is there anything also online coming for online training for SRH?
Yes, we produced videos in English, Chinese, Spanish, and Italian, and they're all in the moment in the edit also to give you, in the Corona times, ideas how to set this up. This is 13 short videos going through the single steps and how to adjust PID, how to mount whatever there, how to get the joystick working the way you like it. So it's on the way, it's just in the edit.
Okay, it might be even faster than the next session because we are working on the schedule, so maybe we have a change in the schedule for the next weeks. So the online videos might be even earlier than
that could happen, yeah.
Than having you here again.
Which is good because I think then you can see the workshop videos, and when we do the Tech Talk live, you may have some questions which you missed in the videos, and we can just answer these questions to you. I think it would be even good to change the timing.
Okay, here comes a question about the rolling behavior. When balancing and doing the roll test, if it does not roll the 5 degrees back to its original point or neutral position, is that a balance issue most likely or a power issue in the settings of the motors?
No, it's only gravity. That means what happens is that something is wrong in your sled setup. Number one is your pendulum is not in a good position, so you should really push the pendulum a bit more forward. So when this is the post, make sure the pendulum is, as I said before, 50 millimeters in front of the post. Then the weight of the pendulum will also give you a nice kind of a drop-down feeling in this rotation. But the rotation is not forced at all by the motors. It's only forced by the gravity. The motors will only keep the camera in the wanted position. That the motor is producing the rolling, but that the rig itself is willing to roll 5 degrees left and right. This is only produced by your counterweight. That means if your rig is unwilling to roll, you may have too much weight at the back. Your back is too heavy, or there's too much stuff mounted, or the batteries are too big, or you have too light wide batteries in the front. So you must take care that the front is using batteries or brackets or let's say accessories which have more mass than the mass at the back. If the mass at the back is the same as in the front, the rig will be neutral in any angle, and that's the reason it's not willing to roll anymore. But most of the time it's just the position of the pendulum, and if you push it 5 millimeters more to the front, you will have a way better result.
Okay, another balancing question. When balancing camera, if the camera goes upside down, would you recommend adding weight in the bottom part of the camera? Should it be neutral or heavier in the lower part?
You mean when the camera is just rolling this way by itself? Is this the question?
Well, he says if the camera goes upside down.
This is kind of a vague question. But it sounds like, if I got him right, that he got the camera is too high. Could be a red camera, for example, because the red got a kind of an issue. It's a very high camera. That means the center of gravity is higher than the center of the ring. That means there's a lot of weight just by the design of the camera above the center. And if this is your, let me say, starting point, then my answer to this would be you have to get whatever you mount to the camera below the lens to have more weight below. That means motors have to go down there, Cinetape could go down there, and you should avoid any unnecessary things on top of the camera, even the back. So you should try to get everything below the camera, and this should solve the problem, because then you have a more neutral weight distribution through the entire package.
All right, so if this was not the real answer, or if you misunderstood this, Nico, you will see at the end email address, and please send this again to us and explain it maybe in a different wording, so that Kurt then later on can answer via
just
email.
A photo of the setup. This would be lovely.
Yeah.
Because then I don't have to guess, and it's.
What is the best handle length?
You mean on this handle? I assume you're talking about this handle. Well, the minimum length, as you get it from us, is the regular gimbal plus one extension. It is also quite interesting to even put a second extension here. But in general, the question is hard to answer because I think every operator is everyone got a special taste. And as long you feel fine with even 2 extensions, then feel fine. And if this is a good way for you to work with, then go ahead. The only thing we should avoid is that the handle is too short, because if this is too short, you may just hit the monitor with the Trinity head when you do the up and down movement.
Can the SSB1 already be ordered?
Yeah, it's on stock.
Okay.
Just call.
So,
ship it. Now.
How much having the camera optically centered in the middle of the ring affect the snail effect? Especially when using another camera other than Arri and SEM plates with another third-party plate. So when it's centered optically in the middle of the ring, does it affect the snail effect?
No. As long the camera setup is not crazy out of balance, this is not the main thing. But we, of course, like the reason why we like the SEM plates is you can use the Rolex as a creative part. It means you can use the external radio controller. You can give this to your DP, and he can help you, first of all, with the tilt, which was, for example, happened a lot while 1917, because just walking through this set was already insane. And of course, for all these music videos and car commercials, they're using a lot, the DP loves to use the Rolexes. And here it's key that we can ensure that the center of the sensor is in the center of the movement, that the Dutch looks really nice.
So somebody's asking about the battery position. Can you give some information about the battery position?
Yeah. This is also part of the workshop videos we produce in the last days. Technically, of course, we have a lot of different batteries on the market. We have gold mount and V mounts, and both batteries already asking for a different, let me say, setup concept. Most of the time when you see me operating since the last 4 years, you will always see me, first of all, using very small batteries, and you will see me using gold mount batteries, which I'm always mounting like this. The reason I do it this way is because if the batteries are V-mounted to each other, I don't have to take care about the balance too much, because the left battery is balancing out with the right battery. So this is already neutral just by the way I'm mounting this. With V-lock batteries, it's a little bit more complex, because most of the V-lock batteries tending to be very, very long. So with V-mount batteries, I can only sandwich the batteries. So one battery is on top and the second battery is on the bottom. The other thing I have to take care about by using V-mount is I have to be able to get the battery in and out. So all the batteries have to face forward looking this way. What I do is, when I'm sandwiching V-mount batteries on top, that the top battery is about here, while the lower battery is pointing out like an inch or 2.5 centimeters more forward, just to ensure I get more clearance at the back of the battery, and I give the pendulum so much clearance that I can even move the pendulum 15 millimeters offset of the post. So this is maybe also an answer to the question before. If you take the V-mount batteries, the top one is closer to the post, the lower one is a bit more far away from the post, then you have the needed clearance for the pendulum to get it into the position to get the good rotation drop down later. As I said also before, talking about batteries, you should avoid that the battery in the back is more heavy than the batteries in the front. If you have the issue that you have just 3 huge batteries, I would try another idea. You take one of the heavy batteries at the front high, you take the second heavy battery at the back, but this time, I hope you can see this, we just open up the clamp, we get the battery mount 90 degrees up, and now we move the battery mount as close as possible to the post. So even if this is a heavy battery, but the battery cannot produce any momentum anymore because the leverage is so short. And then the trick is you're adding this. So this gives you the missing weight of the third battery, but you have it perfectly in the center of the post. So this should solve issues with heavy or huge batteries right away. So this is a very simple but very good solution.
Okay, Kurt. So we are running a bit out of time. I give you 2 more questions.
Good.
And one's, I think, an interesting one. I've seen a couple operators locking the Trinity ring, and thus being able to roll the camera in a full 360.
Correct.
Is this safe to do, or can it harm the rig?
It is safe to do, because the only thing you do technically is very simple. You switch off the motors, and you just put a little tape on the motors, because that's enough to lock. Let me try to show you how this works. Because number one, to get a full 360 degrees movement, the rig have to be in a horizontal position, number one. So the post is straight, because in the end, the entire roll is produced by the post, which is rolling 360 in a horizontal position through the gimbal. So what you do now is you're locking, on one hand, the camera in this position, and a simple, lightweight way to do this, you take the yoga block of your girlfriend. So she's wondering why she got only 1 block left. You take the yoga block of your girlfriend, and you make a little cutaway and put it down here. So this is locking, first of all, the camera in this position. And the next you do to stop the roll motors, you just take a little gaffer tape and you put it just on top of the motor, because if you have a closer look, one part of the motor is not moving and one part is moving, and just by connecting these two, the roll axis is rock steady. The only thing you should not do after you did all this locking, to switch on the gimbal. So you have to switch off the entire Trinity head. So you're only using the camera power, but you will not use the gimbal power on. And then it's absolutely safe. And this shot was designed by Arri Robbins, by the way. He was the first who came up with this kind of a shot, and then a very great Indian operator picked up this idea, and he produced some outstanding music videos. So it's brilliant, absolutely nice.
So here's the thing: the questions which we will not answer now, Kurt will answer, maybe not tonight, but maybe tomorrow.
True.
And we give them all to him. So if you have more questions, send them to the email address you will see in a minute. But before we switch to the final chart, and Kurt can say good night or good morning, wherever you are, here's a glass bowl question. The new Trinity head. Somebody heard about a new Trinity head.
Did he?
Did he? Anonymous. Maybe it's also a she.
Her.
Would it allow everything from the Trinity without a need of a tablet anymore?
Yes.
Do you want to give a hint there?
Yeah, whatever you need is with you. It will be in the rig, is a part of the rig. You can even take it away, but you don't need APC anymore. I swear, I promise. This pain in the neck is not a thing anymore. As soon as we can.
Okay. So
Corona slowed down a lot, but this will happen.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kurt.
You're welcome. See you soon.